Good morning, friends. Happy Tuesday. Today is going to be Luke 19, verses 1 through 27, and it's going to be day 30. Now, I know that this is a little confusing, and I want to start off by apologizing. Somewhere around day 22, I made a mistake and got off track. So that's going to actually make today day number 30. So instead of ending the day before Easter, we're actually going to end on Good Friday, and that's okay too. So again, day 30, Luke 19, 1 through 27, and our sweet treat today is that Jesus is inclusive. All right, so yesterday we saw Jesus healing a blind man on the road near Jericho. Today, Jesus is passing through Jericho when he encounters a man named Zacchaeus, a wealthy chief tax collector. Now, if you grew up in Sunday school, you probably know a song about a wee little man called Zacchaeus, right? So this is the story. Luke tells us that Zacchaeus really wanted to see Jesus, but he was a short man. So when the crowd had gathered and Jesus was walking through town, Zacchaeus just couldn't see him. However, Zacchaeus had a plan. He climbed up in a great big sycamore fig tree. Now just imagine this scene in your head, if you will. One of the wealthiest men of their time in this town was climbing a tree to look at Jesus. Think about some of the wealthy men that you know. Think of them in their suits and ties and, pulling up in their Maseratis and getting out and climbing a tree. That's just not what we would see. But when Jesus finally reaches this area near the tree where Zacchaeus is perched, Jesus stops and he just looks up and he calls out his name and he says, "Zacchaeus, come down because I'm going to your house today." Can you even imagine the look of shock on not only Zacchaeus' face, but the crowd around him as well? Zacchaeus had never met Jesus. He had no idea how Jesus could have even possibly known his name. And nobody in the town would have ever thought that Jesus, of all people, would give Zacchaeus the time of day. Luke says everyone in the crowd began to mutter and gripe and complain that Jesus had chosen one of the greatest sinners ever to go home and dine with. No doubt many of these religious leaders were really hoping for that honor, yet it was paid to the chief tax collector. Zacchaeus, being so moved by Jesus' self-invitation, scrambles down the tree and he comes before Jesus and he says, "Lord, I'll give half of my goods to the poor, and any money that I've taken dishonestly, I'll give it back 4 times as much as I took." It only took one sentence from Jesus and a look in his eyes for Zacchaeus to know that he needed to make his life right with God. Jesus smiles and says to him, "Today salvation has come to this house because he is also a son of Abraham." Jesus wants everyone to know that in one short moment, Zacchaeus has gone from sinner to saved, and that even though he was a Jew by birth and by culture, through his bloodline, he was born a Jew. I'm sure most of the Jewish people hated him because he was working for the Romans as a tax collector. But Jesus is saying he's not just a Jew by birthright. He's a Jew, or he's a son of Abraham, meaning he's a believer. He's one of us. He is one of my chosen people. In a spiritual sense, he was also a son of Abraham. Then Jesus reminds them that he has come to seek and save those that are lost. He came to save the Zacchaeuses of this world, and just as much as he came to save those of us who've grown up in church and lived fairly good moral lives. He came to seek the sinners, not just the people that we deem worthy. In verses 11 through 27, Jesus tells the parable of the 10 minas. Now, a mina is a coin worth about 3 months' wages. Luke says that Jesus decides to tell this parable because many people following him believe that the kingdom of God will appear immediately. See, Jericho is very near Jerusalem, and Passover is coming up soon, and so many people are expecting to see Jesus arise as this great political power and show himself as the majestic Messiah that the Jewish people have been waiting for centuries. They're waiting to see this happen. In our words, though, Norval Gildenhuys, sorry about that name, he was a minister of the Dutch Reformed Church of South Africa, and he said that the following parable is rich in historical allusions, and that Jesus probably derived the story from the real events that occurred when Archelaus, the son of Herod, went to Rome after his father's death to become the sovereign over his kingdom. So I apologize for that. I missed a spot, and we're switching gears to the next parable here. The story of Zacchaeus wasn't a parable. It was an actual event that happened. And after that occurred, Jesus starts to tell a parable. Sorry. So in our words, the parable goes like this. A certain nobleman needed to make a long trip to inherit a kingdom from an older relative. So he called 10 of his servants together and gave them each 1 mina. So 1 mina was about 3 months worth of wages. And he told them to use this money to do business while he was away. Sadly, though, the people who lived in the village around this man, in the area that he ruled over, they just hated him because they were evil people. And so when they heard that he had left to go inherit this kingdom, they sent a delegation after him to tell him that they did not want him to reign over them. When the nobleman returned with his new kingdom intact, he went straight to his servants to see what they had done with the money that he'd given them. The first servant invested his mina, and now it had grown to 10 minas. So he started with 1, he now has 10. And his master is so pleased, and he says, "Well done, my servant. I'm going to give you 10 cities to manage, just as a reward for doing so well." So he goes to the second servant, and the servant says, "Well, you gave me 1 mina, and I worked it, and now I have 5. And the nobleman says, "Wow, that is great. I am so impressed with you. You made 5 minas from 1 through your hard work. So I'm going to give you 5 cities to rule over." It's pretty awesome. So he goes to the next servant. The next servant says, "Well, you gave me this 1, and I just wrapped it up in a cloth and buried it and put it away. And I was just kind of nervous that, I wasn't sure what to do with it. And you don't really need my help. You're already a rich man. So I just tuck it away. And so here's your mina back." So obviously that is not what the master wanted to hear. Instead of simply confessing his disobedience to do business with it, this man uses the excuse that his master's so powerful, he doesn't need his servant doing business for him. This made the nobleman very angry, and he tells his servant that his power should have made the servant even more ambitious to do well, rather than to be lazy and disobedient. He reminds him that at the very least, he should have taken this money to the bank so that it would draw interest, but instead, he's chosen to do nothing. So the nobleman takes the mina away from the third servant and gives it to the servant who now has 10 minas. Of course, the other servants weren't too happy that the guy who already had 10 is now getting an 11th mina. The nobleman addressed his servants by telling them that anyone who has worked to make money will be given more, and anyone who forfeited their opportunity to work at making money will have what little they've been given taken away from them. The master didn't give these servants a mina each because he needed their help. He could certainly make money on his own. He gave them each a mina because he wanted them to partner with him in increasing their wealth together. When the nobleman had dealt with his servants, he then asked them to bring the local townspeople to him, the ones who had all that evil hatred against him, and he ordered them to be killed right in front of him. His servants had all been dealt with according to their performance, but the people who hated their master was killed. They were killed. I believe Jesus is trying to show us here that while he doesn't need our help, he wants to partner with us to further the kingdom of heaven. He's giving us the opportunity to grow and stretch and reach wide in our ambitions to reach lost souls for Christ. He gives us all the same commands and the same starting point, just as the nobleman gave his servants each a mina. Jesus wants to know what we're going to do with what we've been given by him. Are we going to invest it? Are we going to use it to reach more people? Or are we going to hide it away and not use it? Likewise, while Jesus deals with each of us, his servants, according to our performance, those who utterly reject him are not any different than the local citizens who hated the nobleman. Someday, those who openly and willfully reject him will face the ultimate punishment and not pay only with their lives here on earth, but also with their eternal lives. Our sweet treat today is that Jesus is inclusive. Jesus included the tax collectors and the sinners and the outcast of his day. Jesus also includes you and I to help in his kingdom work, even though he doesn't need our help at all. It's a great gift to be included by Jesus. I pray we never take that for granted. May we all be like the first two servants who receive much from God and work to turn it into even more for his kingdom's sake. Hope you are having a wonderful day, and I will see you back here tomorrow. Bye-bye.